What if I told you there was one single free strategy that can A, reduce turnover, B, improve quality measures, C, increase staff morale, and D, positively impact client outcomes? I know, it kind of sounds like a silver bullet, but I've seen it over and over again. And the science of behavior backs this up. Frequent supervision meetings that include the right components can have game-changing impacts on your organization. Hello, difference maker, and welcome to IDD Leader, the podcast that's all about helping IDD providers retain and grow their DSP workforce using behavioral science. I'm your host, Nate Beers, and to be perfectly honest, I get really excited about today's topic. I think it's because I've had some truly outstanding bosses in my career, and I've had some truly awful bosses. And the difference in the quality of my work experience, and really, it bled over to the quality of my life in many aspects, but it's been huge. And yes, there's many key behaviors that make for a good supervisor, a good boss. But one big key is having a regular touch point meeting with supervisees. And when this supervision meeting or supervision is done right, it has positive cascading effects, and it just makes such a tremendous difference on retention, engagement, and morale. Let me share a little bit of my journey. When I first was a supervisor, in retrospect, I don't think that I was very good. I meant well, but you know what that means. That's code for not competent. I had some things right. I did know how to model some good behaviors, but one of the things I completely lacked was really the awareness of what it looks like to empower and take care of team members, people that are reporting to me. And I really just thought, well, we have this job to do. We need to get it done, and you need to just help me get it done. I did not have a concept of how potent and how powerful my investment in each person that's working for me could be, or how important ongoing feedback and support and giving tools and connecting people to rewards and reinforcement. I had no idea how impactful those things were. And so, sorry to anyone if you're listening and if I was ever your supervisor early in my career, hopefully it got better from there for you. But since then, it's been a journey for me over, coming up on 2 decades, not quite there yet, but almost 2 decades. It's been a journey of learning how to become just a highly effective supervisor. And so much of that has looked like learning the right ways of investing in people, of providing feedback, the right ways of meeting with people individually and customizing the way I meet with them, or caring about what they care about and making adjustments based on the individual. And through all that, I've learned a lot more about how to bring out the best in people and a whole lot more about awesome supervision meetings. In fact, it's become a passion point to be training others in that as well. So today, supervisions that rock the house. In 3 words, a high-impact supervision involves feedback, tools, and rewards. But before I get into those 3 things, it's important to note the climate or the overall context and the goal of supervision. A good supervision means that you can multiply your efforts by making the staff under you better at their job, or at least helping in that cause. Here's where we need to model what we're hoping our direct line supervisors do. So if you're a manager or upper level manager, we have to model this with those that we're supervising, so that when they in turn are supervising, DSPs or whoever they supervise, that they actually do it. So we got to practice what we preach. Supervision should be an exciting time for those coming to meet with us. And for our supervisors, it should be an exciting time for the DSPs who work for them to meet with them. Why? Why would a supervision meeting be exciting? It's because when you know that you're going to get praise and get listened to, and a few other things we'll go into, it becomes very reinforcing for the vast majority of people. It's a very positive experience. Good supervision connects staff to positive outcomes that they are bringing about for the clients and for those around them. For example, it's always worth the time to celebrate recent client wins and to help show staff how they contributed to these wins. So it's connecting people to positive outcomes. Why else would supervision be an exciting time? Well, good supervision helps connect DSPs or the supervisors if you're the manager supervising them, but it connects people with the tools they need to succeed. So if there's a need or somewhere that a supervisee doesn't have something that they really would do well to have, supervision is a place for them to get that addressed. For example, a new DSP may be struggling to understand some of the needs of autistic individuals. Well, their supervisor could help ensure that to sign them up for a training about autism, and then they would be given a little bit more tools to be working with that population. Maybe a DSP shares frustrations about a coworker. Well, their supervisor can look into it, can tell them, hey, I'm going to look into this, and then address that concern. And of course, that's going to be nuanced depending on the specifics, but it doesn't have to go unspoken or unaddressed. One other aspect is that for just why supervision can be such a rewarding experience is that literally we're connecting those that we supervise with rewards that they're moving towards. And I'm going to go into more on that in just a couple minutes. All right, difference maker. Let's take a look at these three main objectives. We're talking about feedback, tools, and rewards. But first, feedback. The actions of a supervisor in the supervision meeting are asking good questions and active listening. Now, that's actually worth taking a quick pause to focus on for just a moment. A skillful question asker can elicit all kinds of very potent and powerful responses. For example, if someone was late to their shift, a not so great way to handle that, well, the worst thing to do would be to do nothing. That would be the worst of all, because feedback is powerful. But a fairly ineffective way to engage that would be to say, hey, you were late on your shift. Or any other kind of a statement. Even some questions can be like leading a statement or leading to defensiveness. Like, you know you were late for your shift, right? Or why were you late? Because all that's going to do is just get excuses or get defensiveness. But asking a good question could look something like, help me understand what happened on Tuesday when you came in at 7:10 instead of at 7 o'clock. And if it's done well with with active listening, leaning in to pay attention to what the person's saying, this can really unlock people. And oftentimes, some of the most potent feedback is when people see themselves. So it's not just a matter of the supervisor giving feedback. Oh, I said it. Oh, I told them. Yeah, well, I've told my kids a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that they're doing it. But if I ask a good question, whether it's children or whether it's someone I'm supervising, if I ask them a question to help them discover it or help them discover what's going on or some of the factors that were leading into it or the results that happen after it, those are powerful moments that often lead to real change. Another powerful moment that can lead to real change is giving behavior-specific praise. This is another form of feedback that I utilize in supervisions where I don't just tell someone, hey, you're doing a great job, but I'll tell them, I saw how you handled that upset family member the other day, and I wanted to say I'm very impressed. I was on the email thread, and you did a great job of validating their concerns, but then also reframing what was happening. Along these same lines, with feedback, asking for behavior-specific change. So if I'm asking someone to change, I'm not asking them, change your attitude or some kind of generalized thing. I'm always looking, what's a very specific, measurable, something that's observable, in other words, behavior. And when I'm asking for change, I'm asking for behavior-specific change. This is done, it's best when it's done close to the moment. So if I don't have a supervision scheduled with that person soon, I'm going to make it a point to go over and talk to them. But sometimes it is best to do it in a supervision setting because I don't want other people around to hear this if I'm asking for change from someone that reports to me. I want that to be a one-to-one conversation. Another aspect of feedback, listening to the feedback that the supervisee is giving you. In other words, paying attention not just to what, I mean, we're not, how can I say this? A lot of times, a supervision or a relationship between a boss and someone they're supervising, it's not set up necessarily where I'm going to ask them in some kind of insecure way, hey, do you think I'm doing okay as a boss? I don't mean it like that. I mean, we pay attention because everything that they're saying is a form of feedback. If they are very closed off and not opening up at all, that is a form of feedback. That's showing me that probably I'm not making supervision a safe place, or maybe it's just showing me that their learning history, their past experience with supervisions have been pretty negative. It can be showing me a lot of different things, but it is a form of feedback. And sometimes the feedback from supervisees doesn't just happen in the supervision meeting, but it could be happening out and about. Sometimes the market will speak to us. If they are complaining about coworkers, and then I'm meeting with another one of their coworkers who's also complaining about them, there's something going on there that needs to be addressed. And so listening not just to what they're sharing about themselves to help them in discovery process, that's important, but listening to feedback that they might be giving that has to do with contributions I'm making, whether directly or indirectly. This is very powerful. Feedback should always be more than one way. It's a two-way street. And there are times where I ask very pointed feedback about myself to supervisees, but I understand that there's a power differential there, and truth be told, if they speak up about anything at all, it takes guts, and it usually takes time for me to establish trust at that level. However, that feedback can be very, very valuable as well. Last thing I'll say about feedback, as far as the actions of feedback during supervision, is encourage, encourage, encourage. One of my big goals in life is to be one of the most encouraging people around. And so I very much try to do that. And I've found that the people that give a lot of encouragement tend to promote high morale, tend to have much higher retention rates of those around them that are working for them. It is a powerful tool to use. So be encouraging. And if you're not encouraging, well, that might be a deeper issue than what we can resolve today on this podcast episode. However, there are steps that can be taken to learn to become more encouraging. And now a couple outcomes that can happen with these actions of feedback. What are some of the outcomes that happen? Well, supervisees often will walk away feeling pumped, feeling positive. They feel valued and heard. And the other thing is that they often will get much more clear on what they're doing, that their boss thinks is good, and where they can improve. And that is very valuable information. The right employees care about that, of knowing what is being valued, what they're doing that's working well, and what maybe needs to be improved upon. Number 2, tools. What does that even mean? Tools. Well, some of the actions, I think it will become clear as I describe this. Some of the actions for tools include asking and assessing during every supervision if your supervisee needs something that they don't have. Now, you can ask this directly. You can also just be observing it. It's really important to talk candidly about the things that they want to have in order to be successful. Sometimes it can be some simple little thing, like a glitch on some technological piece, or they're locked out of their email and they don't know how to solve that, or something that seems like, well, gosh, can't you just figure this out on your own? But if it is a stumbling block to them, how valuable is it as a supervisor to come in and just be of assistance, like literally just help them do their job better? And then the other aspect of that, so some of that they might bring to you, the other aspect of that is initiating suggestions for tools that might help them do better at their job. And this could be maybe trainings that they go to, but it also could be just asking them, like, if the way that the scheduling, is working for them. Again, you might not be able to fix what's not working for them if it's not, but talking about it. Are they being set up for success? Sometimes we might be setting up someone to fail in ways that we don't even realize as a supervisor, or something else in the environment could be setting them up to fail. Those conversations are super helpful to be having during supervision. Under-promise and over-deliver. That is an action that I've been working on for about a decade or more now, of learning to under-promise and over-deliver. The other aspect of that same exact thing is to follow through on getting them what they need. If someone's reporting to me, I want them to have what they need, and I want to make sure I follow through with whatever I say I'm going to do. In fact, I won't leave a meeting without making a clear note in a system that works for me, to where I know I'm going to come back to it, to follow through. Just like I want my supervisees to follow through, man, I got to model that. I definitely want to be one who follows through, and I strongly encourage that for you to do the same, and to encourage that across your organization as well. The outcomes, one of the biggest outcomes that happens when we're equipping people with the tools that they need, is that they trust. They will trust your word so much more as you follow through, as you're watching out for them. The other thing is they're going to feel supported. If listening to them makes them feel valued, giving them the tools they need makes them feel supported. And when people feel supported and valued, that is a powerful combination that makes them much more likely to stick with your organization. Culture, another outcome is that when people in organizations are following through, and that becomes the normative culture, the expectations can just rise. That here at this agency, at this company, we're a type of people that follow through with what we say we're going to do. And the other big outcome is just simply that they become more successful in their job because they have the tools that they needed. The third action and final action, or final focal point for today, wow, words sometimes, anyhow, is rewards. The actions with rewards look like this. Let me start with this. In fact, I'll start with this instead. If you were to write down the name of each person you supervise, whether that's just a handful of people, whether that's a bunch of people, but then if you, next to each person's name, write down one or two or three things that they value, like something that would make their day. And then also, as you're figuring out what they value, hopefully you know this just from knowing them and paying attention, but you want to ask yourself, what could I do to make their day? Would that be praising them in front of a group of their peers? If you have the ability to, it depends on the roles that you're in and that your supervisees are in, but can you give them a little bit more flexibility or just a little bit of extra time off if they just put in extra effort or something to that effect? Or maybe it's something tangible, like maybe they would really appreciate some kind of a really cheesy plaque or inside joke token of appreciation or something to that effect. If you know these, then you can leverage these to reward your staff when they do good things. If you don't know these things, and if it's hard when you're writing down next to their names, hard to fill in the rest of this activity, then you can ask them, and you can pay attention to how they respond when you do different thoughtful gestures. But in every supervision, I strongly encourage that every supervisor, sets aside time to celebrate successes, things that the supervisee's done well, but then always connect these actions to the bigger win, how it's affected the quality of life for consumers, how it's impacted team morale. And then the other aspect is make best practice behaviors result in actual rewards. Now, as a side note, I've actually helped an agency set up a simple but powerful reward system that wasn't just about like time accumulated work anniversaries, or it wasn't just about kind of all staff appreciation. Those things are great. But where when staff engaged in certain behaviors, they actually could earn bonus rewards. But whether or not, so that's kind of a cool thing that can be done in an agency-wide. But even if it's not being done agency-wide, you could just hop onto ChatGPT and ask it to put in a couple criteria, ask it to write a funny poem about something great that the whole team just did. And if you give enough criteria, it's amazing what it can come up with. And then you can just share that poem. Again, it's kind of a cheesy thing, but you're making best practices rewarding and trying to reinforce those behaviors. Another aspect you could do is you could make a specific challenge to your team that if they do, blank within 1 month, then you'll have a pizza party or do some other great thing that's relatively inexpensive, but it's still meaningful. You could make it individualized. Everyone who stays completely up to date on their trainings this quarter, they're going to get a $10 gift card to go treat themselves. Or just, the options are almost endless. But in my supervision meetings, I often will try to say, hey, are you working towards such and such reward? And as soon as I have that in place, it becomes this awesome conversation starter to ask them, how are they doing on their progress towards their goal? The outcomes of this is that people, the supervisees will feel valued again when they're having these supervisions. It often, another outcome is that it will tend to increase the best practice behaviors because engaging in these types of behaviors gets noticed and it gets rewarded. It just makes the workplace more fun. And one of my favorite outcomes is that the conversations at supervisions become less about me kind of trying to, quote, motivate my employees, and a lot more about me just checking in, how's it going as you're working towards X or Y or Z? And often the conversations are a little bit less on deficiency and more on what's going well, which again just creates this positive ongoing cycle. So there you have it. There are the three things. A high impact supervision should include feedback, tools, and rewards. Now, this episode raises an obvious question. Hopefully it's clicking. Hopefully you're already engaging in a lot of these things. But the question it raises, how can we get all the supervisors, all the managers, everyone in leadership in our organization to be having these kind of supervisions? And all I can say for you right now is to be on the lookout for a follow-up episode. I'm sorry to leave you hanging, but I'm actually going to go into the specifics on how to implement this across the agency. And I'm even going to have, I'm planning on having a giveaway on that episode as well. At this point, I don't know which number, but it should not be too far down, too far in the future from now. But I thought it's very important just to really dive into and outline and kind of explain what an awesome supervision looks like, so that if we're talking about implementing this across an agency, we actually want to be in agreement on what we're implementing. So yes, it will be coming in a future episode. And yes, it is very important to know not just how to have this for ourselves, but then how to implement this, or what does a system look like that would create these types of supervisions across the agency, so that all of our DSPs are looking forward to hopefully they're having this once a month, but their once a month touch point with their supervisor. Maybe they're even having it more frequently. Certainly some roles need it more often than that. I'm talking about a set aside specific supervision meeting. Obviously, we need supervisors touching base more frequently than once a month with those they supervise. Okay. On a different note, I want to hear from you, difference maker. What does supervision look like at your agency? Is it working? And how do you know it's working? Please send me a comment or ask a question, and I would love to hopefully share it on a future episode. It's very simple. You can simply email me at Nate, Nate, at iddleader.com. And today, as you were listening, you might be realizing that there's someone you know that would really benefit from hearing this episode. And I've got two ways you can help them. First, you could just send them this episode. Just copy and paste, or send a link or whatever. Send them this episode. I'm sure it's going to add value to their lives and to their leadership. Secondly, if you take a minute to review this podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this, it actually helps other people find the podcast, which in turn would actually just add value to their lives and hopefully spread the word about this cool thing that's happening here at IDD Leader. It would be fantastic if you did that, and I would greatly appreciate it. And hopefully it will actually make more IDD providers just get stronger and be better at retaining their workforces. Okay, until next time, here's to you, difference maker. Keep up the amazing work.